do want to give you an update on Tom. If you've been with us for a while, you know kind of what was going on with him. If you've been a guest with us over the last 4 or 5 weeks, you've probably been like, oh, what's really happening? Where is this Tom guy that you're speaking of? And so Tom, our senior pastor, has been out for the last month or so. Just had a surgery, had his prostate removed as he was battling cancer. And so great news with him. Just everything is going the way that the doctors want. And like we say, if it's good enough for a doctor, it's good enough for me, right? That's how I kind of operate in life. And so he is continuing to recover. He's continuing to get better each and every day. I tell you this sincerely, he is longing to be back here. And so he's so ready to see each of you be back here on a Sunday morning. But I know that where he is right now is the best place for him, and that is just resting and continuing to get better. And so please continue to think about him. If you've been with us over the last few weeks, thanks for being gracious with us. You're kind of getting the substitutes over the last few weeks of Dan and I doing this series this month. And I hope it's been still enjoyable for you. I hope that even though it's not been the person you're used to seeing, that it's still been something just remarkable for your life, because I know it's been challenging for me. I know it's been challenging for Dan presenting things like this, because here's where I'm coming from. This series is not a series that we're telling you to fix yourself. This series, it's kind of interesting, the ones that some of these have landed on for each of us. It's been one of those that I'm going, why do I have to talk about the thing that I struggle with? Why do I have to talk about the thing that does attack my heart? And so this has been just a phenomenal series. It's been a lot of fun to be a part of this. And so today we're going to kind of wrap it up, put a pretty little bow on this series that we've been in called Heart Attack. And so a couple weeks ago, I told our student ministry, I was teaching on a Wednesday night, and I told our students something about me that they kind of understood. Some of them drive, and so it was kind of there. Some of them, it went over their heads. But I got quite a response from our adults in the room that I wasn't expecting. And so I was kind of hesitant. I was going to tell you, I wasn't going to tell you. And then I thought, well, I'll tell you this little thing about me, just kind of let you into the world that is Trent's brain, okay? I like to have imaginary races when I drive with the other cars on the road. I'm sensing that some of you do as well. And I love just like racing these other cars, even though they have no idea that they're racing with me or racing alongside me. And I like to go for the pass, and then I go for like the lane swap. And I like to drive just close enough to the person in this lane so that they can't get around me, but just slow enough to where, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm in this like aggressive race mode, and no one else even knows. Like, Haley will be in the car with me and have no idea that this is going on. She'll just see me like looking in my mirrors and looking here. And I do that anyway, just because I'm a safe driver. Okay, I'm always constantly checking my mirrors and all that, of course. But she'll see me like, and she'll catch me, and she's like, what are you doing? Or she actually knows now, and she's like, what's that person doing behind you? Like, what's happening in your just imaginary race here? And so just quick show of hands. How many of you have an imaginary race while you were behind the wheel of the car? Anybody? I love it. That is quite some transparency here. That's really cool. Like I said, over the last month, we've been in this series that we've called Heart Attack, and we've been looking at these emotions that drive us and kind of work their way into our hearts, and not really the good emotions. There's a lot of good emotions that take place and take root in our heart, that they thrive there, and that's a good thing. But we've been talking through ones that we struggle with a little bit. And we've been talking through things like anger and guilt and greed. And what we've realized about these emotions is they have a tendency to grab on to our hearts and just stay there. They grab onto our hearts, and they just kind of live beneath the surface. And at certain times in our life, our hearts will just lash out at somebody, and we'll attack somebody, or we'll say something, or we'll do something. And in our minds, we go, whoa. Who said that? That's not something that I would say. That's not something that I would do. Like, where did this come from? And what we realize is that these emotions live within all of us. These emotions live within our hearts, and they find ways to kind of grow in darkness and grow when we don't speak about them. And they have a tendency to grow, and then they come out in these places and in these times that we don't want to. And as we looked at anger and guilt and greed, we're going to look at a fourth and final one this morning. And I know that your weary hearts are like, I can't take one more. Like, can we have just stopped it there? Why do we have to take one more? And here's the last one, the fourth one, and that is jealousy, envy. It's an interesting word. And you know, as we've gone through this series, we've looked at all of these different emotions in the form of a debt-to-debtor type relationship. That the way that anger works is anger says, you owe me. You know, you have wronged me. You have done something to me, and now you must pay me. That's how we work in our society. And that's how when anger kind of festers up and anger comes up, it says, you've done this to me, and so you need to do something about it. And then guilt was the opposite of that. Guilt says, well, I have done something to you, or I have done something in my life, and so now I'm now indebted to somebody else. And it's somebody that I owe. And then greed kind of shifts it, and it's a different beast, because greed says that, well, I owe me. That everything that I see is for me. It's for my consumption. It's what I want. And as we've looked at these three, it's how we've dealt with ourselves. It's how we've dealt with other people. But then as we get into this fourth one, as we get into jealousy, it's a little bit of another different animal when it comes to our hearts and when it comes to our lives. And jealousy is nothing new to us. Jealousy is something that we have experienced. It's something that we have seen in other people. You see it all throughout Scripture. You see it in the beginning that Cain was jealous of Abel. Esau was jealous of Jacob. Joseph's brothers were jealous of their younger brother's relationship with their dad. Woody was jealous that Buzz was coming in and replacing him, right? You see, jealousy is not something that is foreign to us. This feeling of somebody else getting what we want or something that we feel like we deserve has played a featured role in human relationships from the beginning. And so where anger says, you owe me, and where guilt says, I owe you, and where greed says, I owe me, jealousy doesn't actually have to do with somebody else. Jealousy, at the root of it, when we say jealousy, we immediately think of what somebody else has or something that we lack. You know, whether it's for me, it's like, well, it's height. You know, you're over 6 foot and you have something that I want, and there's nothing that I can do about it. And that frustrates me. But it's more than just that. It's looks, it's talent, it's money, it's connections, it's on and on and on and on. All of these feelings that we feel when somebody has something that we want. And we assume a lot of times that our jealousy is directed at somebody else, that they have what I lack, and so they are the problem. But when we have a jealousy issue, when we have envy that stirs up in our hearts, that's not an actual issue between you and somebody else. Jealousy's debt-to-debtor relationship is actually God owes me. Because, you know, the problem isn't that your neighbor has a car that you want. The problem isn't that somebody else looks better in those pair of jeans than you do. The problem is that when God was passing out new cars, you got skipped. You didn't get the one that you want. When God was giving out the designer jeans, you know what I'm saying? The people that look good in jeans, when God was handing out those jeans, you didn't get those. And the problem isn't that God made you a certain way. The problem becomes we view ourselves in a way that we think we deserve something different, or we would prefer something different in our lives. And we think, well, God, you know, if you hadn't made me this way, then I would probably feel more comfortable putting on a bathing suit. God, if you hadn't have made me this way, then maybe my hairline would look a little bit better. God, if you had just blessed me with the same athletic ability that you blessed them with, then that would have changed the trajectory of my life. God, if you would have given me the same family life growing up that they had, then I would probably be somewhere else. I would probably be further along than where I am right now in life. God, if you had made me smarter, I would have gotten a better score on my ACT, and I would have gotten more scholarships, and I would have gotten into a better school, and I would have had what it takes to do great things. But you didn't give that to me. You gave that to them. You gave that to somebody else. God, if you would have made me a better communicator, then I would have probably worked my way up this management ladder that I've been trying so desperately to climb, but it has not been happening. And so when it comes to jealousy, it may seem like we have a problem with somebody else, and it may seem like we have a problem with the person who lacks what we don't have. The person who possesses what we don't have. But a deeper look at this, that we realize, God, you could have solved this problem. God, you could have given me these things that I feel like I deserve. God, you being the creator of all things, you had what it takes to do something about this. And I think that most of us believe that on some level, that if God had taken as good of care of you as he has of some of the people that you know and some of the people that you interact with, that your lives would be richer, or your lives would be better, or your life would be more fulfilling. But when it comes to jealousy, it's not an issue between you and somebody else. It's an issue between you and God. Because let's face it, if your neighbor with a shiny new car went out and bought you that shiny new car, that wouldn't really fix the problem, would it? It would probably just make matters worse. It would probably just make you more frustrated at how your life is going because of this circumstance. And this is the tension that we face, and this is the tension that we have to manage when it comes to jealousy, is because rarely does jealousy surface in our interactions with God. Rarely does jealousy come up when we communicate with God. Rarely do we attribute God with being the one that caused us not getting what we feel like we deserve or what we feel like we want. And the irony is that when it comes to jealousy, is it does manifest itself in our interactions with others. It does manifest itself in our conversations with somebody behind this person's back. You see, jealousy at its core comes back to an issue that we have with God and an issue that we have with ourselves and the way that we view ourselves in view of God. Because let me ask, can your sister, little misfit, can she make you skinnier? No. Can your doctorate to be receiving genius brother make you smarter? No. Would it really help if Mr. Fancy Car neighbor bought you a car just like his? No. Our problem isn't with other people. Our problem isn't with them specifically. It's the fact that our problem comes from God was handing things out and God was deciding and determining who would get what in life, and we got skipped. And here's the problem. And here's the tension that I sense in the room. Because it doesn't sit well with me either to say, well, God owes me something. It's an interesting concept. It's an interesting thought to say that, God, you owe me something. But I think that's why our jealousy goes so unguarded in our hearts. I think that's why jealousy just runs rampant in our world, is because we have this very misdirected approach to where jealousy comes from and how jealousy should manifest itself in our lives. And as long as we allow jealousy to run rampant in our hearts and we allow jealousy to attack those around us, it is an issue that I believe will almost never be resolved for us. And I say almost never, because those of you who struggle, that are like me, that struggle with envy and that struggle with jealousy and struggle with feeling like we should get something that we deserve that we don't, there are small moments in life where that jealousy is alleviated. There are small moments in life where the things that we want and the people that have what we want, there's a moment where we just get some satisfaction to that. And I think it is one of the ugliest forms of human nature that shows in our world today. Do not raise your hand. Not that you're going to want to raise your hand if this is you. But I think that one of the ways that we get an alleviation from our jealousy is when someone that we are jealous of, or someone who has something that we want, when they experience a setback in life, that's those moments that we go, that makes me feel better, doesn't it? It's those moments when somebody that seems to have gone one or two steps ahead of you and you go, well, why did they get that and I didn't? And then all of a sudden they get brought a step back and you're like, did I say that out loud? Did I say that internally there's this struggle, there's this battle that we feel that when somebody else experiences a setback, especially somebody that has something that we want or has something that we desire or has something that we feel like we deserve, we get this like, that makes me feel better. That makes me feel like I'm climbing up, even though that's not what's happening. Even though you may feel like the gap is being bridged, it has nothing to do with where you are in life. It's more so they are moving down than you are moving up. But internally, it feels like we are getting closer to them. And it's why I think that jealousy, that envy, this last one is, I think, the most dangerous emotion that we can let control our hearts and attack our hearts, because the way that it manifests itself, the way that it shows itself in our world and in our lives and in our relationships and in the ways that we work and interact with people shows and demonstrates a very ugly side of our human nature. Now that I've made you feel horrible this morning, let's look at what jealousy does to us. Solomon, one of the wisest men that ever lived, wrote this about jealousy. He says that envy, this is in Proverbs 14:30, he says, envy rots the bones. Ugh. Like you just look at that, you read that and you're like, that doesn't sound like it's good. That can't be good for my heart. That can't be good for my body. That envy just rots the bones. And what envy and jealousy does is it leaves us constantly competing with people. It leaves us constantly competing with people who don't even know that there's a competition. It leaves us constantly just in angst over what somebody else is doing as opposed to what we are doing. Envy makes us arrogant because it makes us look down on people. It makes us feel superior to people who don't have the things that we want, that are running in this race that they don't realize that they're running in. But envy also makes us feel depressed because it points out all the things that somebody else has and all of the ways that we never measure up. And I'll give you some good news and bad news about jealousy, just kind of all wrapped up into one statement. You good with that? Jealousy is not a problem to be solved. Jealousy is a tension to be managed. I say that's good news and that's bad news all in one, because the bad news is this, is that you will never fully conquer jealousy in your world. You will never, in the lifetime span that you have, you will never conquer jealousy because it is something that is ingrained in human nature. It is something that is ingrained in who we are, and we think, and we have these feelings and we have these emotions that come up. And in our lifetime, we will never solve the problem of jealousy. But here's the good news. Even though you'll never solve it for a lifetime, you can choose to manage it for today. You can choose to manage this tension of jealousy today and the next day and the next day. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. That it happens in the moment, that it happens when it comes up in our lives, when we stir these emotions, that when we feel this envy and this jealousy come up, that's when we have to choose, am I going to manage this tension well? I'm a firm believer that if you can pre-decide something in your life, that your chances of actually achieving that outcome is so much better, that if you know going into a scenario or a situation how you are going to respond or how you are going to act, or if you choose, you know what, this is something that I want to stay away from in life, that when you're brought to that situation, it is so much easier for you to say, no, that's not for me. That's not what I want to do. That's not the path that I want to take. It's so much easier when you can pre-decide something ahead of time. And so when it comes to jealousy, here's what I think is vital. That when it comes to jealousy, you and I, we have to pre-decide that when jealousy comes our way, that when envy festers beneath the surface and that it begins to make its way out of our hearts and into our lives, how are we going to manage this? How are we going to manage this tension that jealousy brings? Because, like I said, jealousy is dangerous. It has this ability to dictate how we feel about people and how we treat people and how we view ourselves. But man, jealousy is something that I believe, even though we will never conquer it and we will never eradicate it from our lives, it's something that we can manage gracefully day in and day out. Solomon, he talks more about jealousy in the book of Ecclesiastes. It's at least attributed to him. In Ecclesiastes 4:4, it says this is what Solomon's saying. He says, then I saw that all the toil and all achievement, it came from man's envy of his neighbor. And what he's saying is look, there are a lot of people that their driving force, that their thing that's beneath the surface that is pushing them along and motivating them along, it is done out of jealousy. It is done out of envy for somebody else. They are choosing to work hard. They are choosing to achieve. They are choosing to do good so that they can run in their own little race that nobody else is really running either. That they're choosing to do things so that they can climb this ladder that doesn't really exist. Because what he says is, this is a vanity. It's like a striving after the wind. What he's saying is that when you and I, when we're motivated by jealousy, when we're motivated by envy, it is a meaningless game. It is like chasing the wind. Let me ask, how many of you are dog people in the room? Quite a few. Very good. Where are my cat people? You exist too. It's okay. There's no shame in the cat game. All right. Did you notice something? That when I said, where's the dog people? It's like, boom. Where's the cat people? Those hands went down, these hands went up, okay? I'm about to find the common divide common divide. I'm about to find the thing that bridges the gap between cat people and dog people. Are you ready for this? Where's my laser pointer people? Y'all know what I'm talking about. When you get the little laser pointer and you put it on the ground and your cat or your dog, it doesn't matter which one, your cat or your dog chooses to chase this little dot all around your house, all around your house, all around your house, all around your house, right? Where are my laser pointer people? It's okay. Some of you are like, that is animal abuse. And some of you are like, it's really funny though. And it's like, where do you fall in this? But here's what I want you to see. Here's how I want to illustrate this to you. The laser pointer, this is a meaningless game for your dog and for your cat. It is like chasing the wind. And here's how I want you to see this. It's because with chasing the wind, there's no end to this game. There's no finish line. There's no we are done. We are in a break. And so your poor dog right now is at home thinking there is a laser dot that is hiding somewhere in this house. And I can't find it. I hadn't seen it in a while, but I know that it is here, okay? This is what jealousy does to us. Jealousy puts something within us that makes us realize that there's no end, there's no peace, there's no break. I have to keep going, I have to keep fighting, I have to keep pushing, I have to keep looking. Because when we play this jealousy game, when we play this comparison game to us versus them, what it does is it constantly keeps us looking over our shoulder for what's coming next. It constantly keeps us looking out. What is this person doing? What is this person doing? What is my competition doing? What is this person that doesn't even realize that I'm running a race with them? What are they doing? And what it does is it always looks for the in life. It always looks for the because there's always going to be somebody in this comparison game that is going to be bigger than you. There's always somebody that's going to be faster than you. There's always going to be someone that's stronger than you, that's smarter than you, that's skinnier than you, that's cuter than you. And when we play this comparison game, when we play this jealousy game, when we run after things that don't matter, what we realize is that we are just chasing the wind. We are the dog chasing the laser pointer around the living room because there is no end to this game we play. There's no end to this comparison that we feel. And envy has the potential, it steals the joy out of the things that we do in life. It steals the joy out of the accomplishments, out of the achievements, because instead of succeeding in a moment, instead of feeling this sense of gratification, what we do is we get this and we're looking for others. We're looking for what more can we do? What more can we do? What did this person do? That we don't ever stop and we don't ever celebrate, and we don't ever rest, and we don't ever appreciate where we are and where we have gotten to in life. And hear me on this, okay? I'm all for setting goals. I'm all for improving yourself and making environments great. But when we do this out of this ambition to be bigger and to be faster and to be stronger and to be better, when we do this out of the ambition of how can I be better than this person? How can I win this little race that I am running? We have already lost. We have already lost because we're always looking over our shoulder for the next And Solomon, he's dead on. He goes, it's meaningless. There's no win in this game that you play. And then he says something that it has the potential to not sit well with you, especially if you're the driven achiever type. But this is what he says. He says, it is better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. What he says is he uses a word that we don't use, this word tranquility. It's a word that we don't use, but he says that there can be peace and there can be calm and there can be a moment of rest in your life. And he says, most of us, we work like this. Hands going, I'm all for it. What can I fill up in this hand? What can I fill up at this hand? And I'm bringing all of that to me. I want all of these things. And Solomon says, it might be better for you if you work with one hand open and one hand closed. That you strive and you work hard and you do the things that you need to do to achieve in life. But maybe, just maybe, it might be better for you to operate with less if it will lead you to contentment. Because when we strive for more and we strive for more and we strive for more and we strive for more, what it does is it fills up our hands and we never get this satisfaction of where we are and who we are. But he says, you know what? It might be better for you to have less so that you can actually enjoy what you have. Because here's what we do. We work and we work and we work and we strive and we strive and we strive. And what we accidentally do, no, I don't think anybody does this on purpose, what we accidentally do is we neglect the relationships around us. We neglect to appreciate what's around us. We neglect the feelings and the emotions and the relationships of the people that we love and the people that we care about and the people that we are charged to take care of in our lives. And we just fight and strive for more, and for what? He continues, he says, again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man who was all alone. He had neither a son nor a brother, and there was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. He's working like this. And he stops and he says, for whom am I toiling? Why am I depriving myself of this enjoyment? And Solomon goes on, because you see how this story applies. He says, this too is meaningless. It is a miserable business. You got to understand, and this story and the way that this breaks down is in this time frame, women could not get an inheritance, couldn't receive an inheritance. Praise God that things have changed just culturally in where we live. But this man realizes he has no brother, he has no son, he has no one to pass on his family inheritance to. And so he's working and he's working and he's working and he's working and he's got both handfuls filled. And then he comes to a realization of, why am I doing this? Who am I doing this for? Who is going to benefit from me working and working and working? And I know the tension, it comes especially from dads, and I know there's some working moms that you go, I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for my kids. I'm doing this to give them something that I didn't have growing up. I'm doing this to give them more. But I think it comes back to Solomon says, look, more can be awesome. More can be great. You can do a lot of good things with more. But I think that when it comes to a discontentment that we feel in life, and when we have to battle this tension that we have to manage of achieving more and striving for more and gaining more, because when we start to feel discontent with our life and we start to neglect the people that are closest to us, he goes, maybe, just maybe, it would be better for us to operate like this. That maybe we can deal with less if it means that we have a better relationship with our kids. That maybe we can deal with less if it means that we have a better relationship with our spouse. That maybe, just maybe, it would be better for us to operate with less if it meant that we had a better relationship with God. My question for you is, who are you internally competing with? For some of you, that's you, and that's a good thing. You is a good motivator, but for a lot of us, it is somebody else. A lot of us, it is someone that we are striving to fight against, that we are striving to compete against, that we are striving to win this little race, and they don't even realize that they're in a race with us. And what we do is we alienate the people that are around us. We push the people that are closest to us away from us. And for some of you, you know exactly who that is. For some of you, you're like, I have the name, I have the face. This is who I constantly compete with. For some of you, it's this shadow of expectations that you grew up with from your mom or from your dad that you go, you know what, I'm constantly striving and I'm fighting for this approval to get from them. And some of you are in this situation where you're constantly striving and you're constantly working for this approval of a parent who's already passed away. And there's this like internal motivator that I have to do good, or I have to be good, or I have to achieve more, because if I did that, then I know that it would have made them proud. I know that it would have made them love me more. It would have given me this affirmation from them. And I think what we've done is we've created this situation of discontentment in our lives. And so now that we got 10 minutes to make you feel better before you leave, okay? My intention is not to make you feel bad. My intention is to allow us to see how jealousy and envy can just wreak havoc in our world. And if we can know that, if we can sense that and see that and watch that play out in our lives, what we can do is we can say, whoa, 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 whoa. Jealousy, you don't get to attack me anymore. Envy, you don't get to attack my life anymore. I'm going to take back control of my heart, and I'm going to take back control of what I want. And so do you know what it takes to rid yourself of jealousy? It doesn't have anything to do with your neighbor. It doesn't have anything to do with somebody else who has what you don't want. To rid yourself, to rid your heart of jealousy means you got to take a long, hard look in the mirror. You got to look at this person that you are, and you got to realize that, you know what? I've got to settle a debt. I've got to settle a debt that I feel. You remember back, we talked about this in week 2. What is the remedy to our anger? Somebody tell me. Come on now, it was only 3 weeks ago. What is the remedy to our anger? It's forgiveness, right? That in order for us to rid ourselves of anger, it means we have to forgive somebody else. And so I think it means that, what we have to do is we have to take all of this discontentment we have to feel in life about our circumstances, about where we are, about our possessions. We've got to take the old car, and we got to take the small house, and we got to take the hand-me-down dining room, and we got to take all of these things that we are discontent with in our own life, and we just got to put it in one big old discontent pile, okay? Put it right there in a pile, and you know what you need to do? You need to tell God about it. Say, God, do you see this pile of my life? Do you see these things about my life? Do you see where I am? God, I know you were the creator, and I know that you could have done something about this. And say, God, I think you owe me in life. And again, it feels weird to look God in the face and tell him that. I know that's a strange thing, but I promise you this, God can handle that. God can handle hearing that from you, and God desires to hear that from you because that is this pursuit of a relationship that you have with them. But in full view of your discontentment with what God didn't do, the next step is you get to take a good, long look at what God has done for you. We sang it this morning right before I came up here. Oh, the cross of Jesus Christ is the reason I'm alive, for his blood has set me free, and it will never lose its power for me. All throughout the New Testament, all throughout the life of Jesus, all throughout these stories of Scripture, there's a very clear realization made that you and I, apart from God, are nothing. That you and I, apart from what God has for our lives and God leading our life and his Spirit moving in our lives, that apart from him, we are nothing. And in this nothingness, God chose to send his Son. And Jesus willingly moved into our worlds, and he took on flesh, and he filled this gap between us and God. And our disappointment with not getting what we want or what we feel like we deserve in life, it pales in comparison to the fact that God has given us the very thing that we needed most. And that is a life that is lived in him. That is an eternal life through him. So the reality becomes that God doesn't owe us anything. The reality is that we owe him everything. But I know it's a process for us to get there. It takes steps for us to get there. And it probably includes an apology to God to say, you know what, God, I've held you to a standard of my life and how I think things should have gone for far too long. And so, God, I'm sorry. And I realize that apart from you, I am nothing. And I acknowledge that you have offered me something that pales in comparison to what I think that you actually owed me. And hear me on this. To alleviate your heart of this emotion that attacks you, it takes us doing this. It takes keeping this perspective in mind, because this clear and this fresh perspective will allow us to see God's mercies every day. It will allow us to wake up and realize that he has done something and he has gifted us with another day. And so in that, when it comes to how we manage this tension, we have another day's worth of strength to do that. Now, let me give you a habit that you can begin to work into your life, that you can begin to ingrain in your life, that when it comes to jealousy, when it comes to envy, when these things come up in your world that you feel, when these like detrimental habits to our life happen, there is a habit that you can use that will guard your heart against that. We said at the beginning, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything that you do flows from it. If you want a habit that you can practice right now, starting today, to begin practicing moving this jealousy and this envy, and to rid yourself of this, it starts with one simple habit, and that is the habit of celebrating. It's celebrating the things that happen in your world. And you're like, celebrate what? Well, I'll tell you what. It's celebrating when somebody gets something that you want. It's telling them that you're happy for them when they get it. Again, if we can align this perspective of who we are and who God is and who we are in view of him, that when somebody gets something that we don't want, I can go, you know what? That's fine, because God, you have given me everything that I need. And yeah, I wish that I would have gotten this, but you know what? I'm happy for you, Because if I was in your shoes, I would celebrate too. And so I can make the decision to celebrate with you. And what I'm asking you to do is essentially, I'm asking you to tell the truth. I'm asking you that when you feel this sense of jealousy come up, it's because somebody gets something that you want, right? When somebody does something that you don't like, or they get something that you don't like, you go, it's no big deal. That doesn't bother me. But it's when somebody gets something that we want, we just need to tell them the truth. It's not being insincere. It's not backhanded compliments. Jealousy is just saying, you know what? You got something that I want, and so I want to celebrate that in your life. Does she look good in that dress? Tell her, you look really nice today. That's saying, you know what, jealousy? You're not in control of my heart anymore. That's saying, this is what I feel and how this is coming up. Just say, you know what, you look nice today. Do you like your neighbor's new car? Tell them, hey neighbor, that's an awesome car you got there. That's taking control of jealousy and not letting it run rampant in your world. Did your partner at work, did they nail the presentation that you wish you could have given? Tell them, man, you killed it today. Did a fantastic job. Yeah, you wish it was you, but it was them. And so to rid yourself of jealousy and to guard yourself against it, it means, you know what, I can celebrate that. Here's the last thing that I want to tell you this morning. God has given you, each and every one of you, God has given you a race to run. And in that, God has given you a lane to run in. And as you are running in this life, as you are running in this race that we get so caught up in looking at what's happening in their lane, 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 that we don't stay in our own lane and realize that we have been placed here for a reason, that we have been placed here for a purpose, and we have been placed here to do something good in the race that we have been called to run. Guys, stop chasing the wind. Stop chasing the laser pointer. Run the race that God has given you and celebrate when things happen that don't always go your way. Going back to the very beginning, we started this verse, Proverbs 14:30. Solomon says this. He says, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. My hope and my desire and my prayer for you as we've gone throughout this series is that you will live with a heart at peace and that your heart will give life to your body, not just for you. It's not all about you, but for the sake of somebody else, for the sake of those around you and the sake of those who are closest to you. So I'll leave you with this. In the battle of your heart, in the battle of these emotions that come up in our world that latch onto our hearts and make their way out in ways that we don't want them to, are you going to let anger and guilt and greed and jealousy, are you going to let those win? Or are you going to let God reign? Are you going to let God reign in your hearts and reign in who you are? Above all else, guard your hearts, for everything that you do flows from it. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything that you do flows from it. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything that you do flows from it. Let me pray for you this morning. God, I'm thankful for who you are. I'm thankful that in the midst of these emotions that we face and these emotions that we battle with each and every day, that you give us ways to combat that, and you give us ways that are applicable, that you give us ways that are tangible to be able to conquer this life. And God, that would not have happened had it not been for your son, Jesus. God, my prayer is that every single person on this campus would allow you to reign in their hearts today. May we be people who don't let guilt and greed and jealousy and anger rule our lives. May it be you that rules our lives. God, we love you, and we all say together,